awesome to meet you. This is a first for us. We have a podcast called the Good Ideas Club, which is a global audience, and we invite people from all different backgrounds, sectors, industries, ages. We kind of say any variable of diversity is something that we can learn from and something that we should build a collective intelligence around.
And super exciting and completely relevant to what I'm doing as well. So background in human computer interaction, understanding people and the role that technology can play in their lives. And I've spent kind of the last decade or so, if I go back a couple different places, I was in at a couple startups in AI wearables and robotics, and then went on to be at Bose for the last 9 years, up until just recently, driving the team that was sort of exploring the future, the 3 to 10 year future and future opportunities there in AI wearables and speakers and all of that. Really amazing opportunity with incredible people there, really working at the intersection of, let's say, human centered and technology centered innovation. And then now what I'm doing is kind of on my own, driving a sort of independent innovation advising and working probably with folks like yourselves and working with clients as well, and helping people kind of navigate the high level of uncertainty here, because it's a space that um, you learn some things working with people over a period of time in these kind of high uncertainty, high ambiguity spaces. You sort of learn the tools and techniques and the mindset of being in that space. And honestly, I love being in that space. And in this particular time of just incredible uncertainty and change and so much excitement, and things are, volatile in the absolute best way, right? And very cool things are happening. So I'm hoping to help work with others and kind of help them navigate the space and explore new opportunities, new product experiences, and things like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's so much to unpack there, right? On the AI wearables, I think that is a separate episode in itself. But just for the listeners, this is the first time we've done a mini episode, and the whole premise of this is because we're having so many amazing conversations where the microphone is off. So I said, like, how do we frame it so that we know that the microphone's going to be on? These are first time introductions with people, and so yeah, the kind of idea of like a mini podcast episode series popped up. So Todd, you're officially the first mini episode guest, and this all came out of the amazing LinkedIn algorithm, which fed me one of your posts, which was talking about this everything you just described there, right? And like what I want to focus this mini episode on is what you've kind of aptly named in your second follow-on post called the Vibecoder's Dilemma, which is a play on the innovator's dilemma, which people know. But like, yeah, like just tell us more about that. Like, what is the Vibecoder's Dilemma, and what have your latest posts all been kind of centered on?
Well, Dan, if I'm getting credit for being the first host here, I'll give you credit for inspiring the term there in the follow up from the first thing I wrote, a little conversation in the chat. Yeah, super interesting. So I've had this opportunity. A good friend of mine who's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the technology now, got me up to speed on vibe coding. He like trained me Cloud Code, and I've been a designer in my whole career in different forms, right? Whether it is interaction design or leading teams, experience design, whatever it is. And he trained me on this thing because I've always had this. There's always just been that hurdle, right? The hurdle of complexity. It's intimidating, frankly, to learn how to code, right? Let's say 10 years ago. But now being set up on this with Cloud Code, he got me all set up, and I started to build things. And I was just absolutely blown away by what was possible. Typing like a human, or even just dictating, just talking, and getting something that like actually works, right? And I know it's messy code and all of that, and it's hacky, but it's a functional prototype, and you can experience your ideas immediately. And for me, that's so exciting because as a designer, it's all about that learning feedback loop. Going from there's an idea in your head to there's a thing you can observe and react to and learn from. And I've been doing this long enough to know like that first idea is just dead wrong, right? um, and your ability to get to that right idea is all about that speed of learning and iteration. And like, that's it. So you have to be able to get started. And that's why the prototyping is so valuable. That's why I've always been a big advocate for a human centered innovation approach, or design thinking, whatever you want to call it, of having an observation, having an idea, creating that prototype and learning. Now with these vibe coding techniques, you can immediately experience that idea in an almost fully formed version of it, which is just absolutely mind blowing. So now that speed, instead of being at weeks, it's minutes,
Yeah.
it's seconds.
I feel the same. I
Um,
think I saw in one of your posts that, like you said, and maybe you just touched upon it then, but you weren't a coding background, but you were, or you don't, sorry, you don't come from a coding background, but you've always been close to the builders. And like that feels very, like I can feel that as well. Like I feel like I describe vibe coding as I've been watching other people build with Lego their whole lives. And I've been telling them, what if we put the red brick there
yeah,
and we do that? And then here, and it was like the first time that I was actually being given arms and I can actually play with the Lego myself. And it's just, like an unbelievable experience. And
absolutely.
Alex is probably a little bit more technical, but I get you fallen in love with vibe coding as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a kind of difficult thing to unpack because on the one hand, it is giving you arms, but on the other, it's giving you like eight arms. Which ones do you use? How fast do you use them? And are you even unpacking the right things? Because as you say, speed to prototype has never been faster, and that kind of also negates the complexity side of things. That I recently wrote an article on it, the kind of innovator's trench, the part where you're absolutely lost and you don't know how the pieces fit together. Because now there's an abstraction layer to which vibe coding will make you anything you want, but without going through the complexities and the intricacies of how that product fits together, sometimes you also lose a lot of the kind of beauty of it, but real solution. Because as you say, the first one is never right. So, but again, I think it's in knowing that very thing, right? And not shipping the first thing you get. But yeah, it's such a exciting thing. But how are you guys seeing that play out in industry at the moment?
Boy, I don't know yet. I think it's too early to say, but I think at least, all right, my hope, I'll give you my optimistic answer of where I think it goes is that now, because of that speed of learning, because of that iteration, the thing that actually really goes out in the world, hopefully not too much of those things go out in the world, but the thing that actually goes out in the world has been hardened and refined through dozens and dozens and dozens of turns of learning, right? As opposed to having to put that first messy thing out in the world because now you can learn that much quicker. So that's my hope with it. But hopefully it doesn't just produce a lot of waste. And I mean, that's what I think is the dilemma part of this, right? So I'm just being optimistic, but I probably shouldn't be here. Let's be realistic for a second, which is the dilemma part of this is that it becomes so exceedingly easy to build something. And this is the thing that I felt myself when I did this. As someone who has been advocating for years about understanding humans and find the right problem to solve, not the obvious problem on the surface, but the one that's sort of latent need, right? By really understanding human behavior and human psychology and really spending time understanding the problem, or to your point, Alex, like understanding the solution, because it takes time and you're learning through that sort of, the mess of innovation. Well, now if it's so quick to build, you just end up overlooking all of those things, right? And you just skip past it. And next thing you know, you didn't spend any time understanding if you were even solving the right problem to begin with.
Yep.
That's
And
problem you need to solve, or how to solve it. Like that's a problem, right?
And are you conflating speed with understanding and progress? Because that's such an easy thing to do. And how do you know where the actual source of truth lies? Because if you're prototyping against yourself, are you even the best person to be prototyping that product?
It's a good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Real-time vibe coding, because I'm working with a client now and we're building a pretty cool system.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like I'm some sort of like Lego sponsored person here, but I'm not. We're building actually a Lego serious play tool that will kind of enhance in-person facilitation and all that sort of stuff. And it's really, really amazing. It's been really good to, like, I built a vibe coded prototype off what I thought the spec was, and we didn't need complex specs because I could literally just build what was in my head, present that to the client. We've then iterated with each other to offset some of Alex's point, where I've got his like but he's not the right target persona either because he's anchored in what he thinks it should be as well. What we're at a stage is at now we need to get it in front of ideal customer personas and start and do real-time feedback and testing and vibe coding to iterate and release. And we can maybe get like well, we've got a 2-hour session planned with like 6 users. And I'm hoping to get at least 6 iterations done in that 2 hours. I mean, you just couldn't do that before. It's crazy to think that's possible now. But whether or not that's going to be effective, we'll see. But yeah, have you tried any kind of real-time user feedback and iteration?
I haven't, but I love where you're going. I mean, what I've been thinking about a lot with this, and this is the future article, I think, which is, you kind of had the double diamond before, but now all of this just kind of, you're doing the same method. So what you're talking about now is a sort of co-creation, but now the time scale of all of this can just collapse on itself. I think in a really cool and interesting way, right? As long as you retain the importance of understanding the human problem to solve, as long as you retain the importance of getting that feedback, well, now, yeah, I mean, to your point, you basically can build every solution to the problem in real time. So instead of just building one thing and trying that out or co-creating one thing and it's just paper prototypes. Now you can co-create a real and functional thing with a client. Better yet, you can make 5 different solutions to the problem
Yeah.
that all solve it in a unique way, right? So now that sort of speed of trying everything at once and learning about everything at once, I think could be completely like, I think as long as you don't like lose the principles, so that the speed drops to 0, which is amazing. I think as long as we don't lose the goodness of the sort of human side of that and the principles that led to like why you'd want to co-create or why you'd want to test or why you'd want to explore multiple solutions. I think if we strike that balance, I think we can maintain the goodness of both the human and the AI power.
Hey, one thing I was thinking about, like while I was kind of getting ready for this, was the whole idea that if we let's say we've got a clearly defined problem that everyone agrees that this is a problem we need to solve and it's very clear, and then we let it then we let natural competition take over and people go away and try and solve that. Well, to my mind, that's good for solving the problem. We've got more people coming up with potential solutions, but the problem with vibe coding is that we may have kind of like 1,000 half-baked vibe coded products. Now, how could we possibly sift through that noise to work out which is the best, or combine the best features from the 1,000 prototypes and combine them into what the final solution looks like? So it's almost like, but then it got me thinking, well, that's a human problem. Like our ability to like test and use and get hands-on experience with these half-baked tools or develop prototypes, probably gives them more justice, is a human problem. But when we started to talk about agentic AI and it being able to run test scripts and almost like simulate what a user does, well, actually then, even if you've got 1,000 versions of that, if there's an effective agentic AI kind of testing layer on that, is it such a problem that we've got all these half-baked problems? Or is it still ultimately that humans need few options to choose from? Otherwise, we just get lost in the noise. Where does the kind of vibe coding possibilities kind of tend towards that problem for you?
I wonder what concerns me in the scenario you describe. What you describe makes total sense of a potential future. And if you play that forward, my concern would be that everything becomes very incremental and data driven, right? Where you create 100 solutions to the problem. Essentially, you could test them all with agentic facilitators and moderators and testers and users, and just like it all played out synthetically. And this is the one right answer. Well, great. But what you're probably going to get from that is a very, I guess, incremental and expected solution. And this is where I think on leaning on the human side of the equation is taste and human creativity to go, no, you know what? The right answer is this direction, even if the data doesn't show it right now. And it's like making this next leap. Because I think that's the other thing I think about with this dilemma is that we're going to be solving too many of today's obvious problems, solving our little, personal incremental solutions, as opposed to making that leap to something that might be.
I don't think you can ever truly use an agentic system to actually even weigh up the incremental solutions of which one, the synthetic side of things. Because as you say, you have to also understand the underlying variables that make the problem. And if you have, let's say, AI that says the best is a variable 1 being 0.7, blah, 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 and you carry that on, you can't actually optimize that because you don't understand the underlying to how the things fit together. So you can't truly ever really take AI's, whether it's a suggestion or kind of axiomatic, this is the best solution, because you don't know how it came to that concept. And yet again, I mean, if you ask the AI the same question, it's usually not even going to give you the same answer. So how do you know what data it used, and how do you know what data is nuanced or important or not important? So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be in the human domain. But I'd like to actually build on one of your prior points, where it's like finding the silver lining between using not only vibe coding, but AI. Because again, it's like, yes, you can use AI from an advisory position and it can be very dogmatic and convincing on things, but you don't actually know, you haven't walked that path, you haven't solved those problems to actually get to that answer. So I think there's going to be a big divide between people who understand things from first principles versus the vibe coder who's on a magic surfboard carpet just flying through the space,
No, for sure. For sure. And that's, again, I think that's that trap of it's very, very, very easy to get to the B- answer. And that'll be alluring for some people. If all you need or want is the B- answer, that's fine. Go get the B- answer, right? It's no different than just Googling a thing versus like taking the time to kind of learning and understanding it, right? Or like, looking up directions versus, understanding how to get somewhere versus just putting it in Google Maps and it tells you how to get there, right? Ultimately, to your point, you'll never understand how to get there if you just ask for the answer every time, right? And it's deciding what are the right things to kind of outsource to the AI and what are the right things that need to be preserved for humans, and understanding that balance and being disciplined about that balance. Because sometimes the human side of it is going to be a lot harder, but it's more valuable in the long term. And I think that's the key with this.
And what do you think the potentials for, humans have a tendency when you ask them what they want to kind of reinvent what they're already comfortable with. And so it's as innovators, sometimes I feel like you're trying to get people to think beyond their comfort zone, but not leap them too far that it becomes too scary. It's trying to like give them metaphors and small steps to see what it could look like in the future. And I'm playing with this a lot at the moment in terms of, what are the systems, what does it feel like and look like to be a human being engaging with the new systems of the future? I'm not talking here about existing systems that have like an LLM patched into it. That's not like fundamentally the core system hasn't changed. You've just added another kind of thing that interacts with it. And so I like, do you do you give people, I don't know, like if we were to run a competition and say we're going to have the same problem statement again, agree that it's a core problem to be solved, so we negate that, are we building the right thing in the first place? Let a team of humans build it the old school way, like an old school sprint with no AI. You're going to go away, whiteboard, sticky notes, build a prototype, whether that's a paper prototype, put it in front of people, traditional 5-day sprint, say, versus a team of 20 AI agents solving the same problem. And then if you were to then put both solutions in front of another group of humans that had no idea where they each were derived from, I'd love to see what the results on that would be and do that over and over again to see then, oh my God, actually, the AI's solution is better because it's exposing this slight kind of possibility of doing it a different way versus the human designed ones, which are just kind of a smaller iteration on what we already know. What are your predictions in terms of that race or outcome?
I think it sounds like a really entertaining like YouTube series you could create, which is this
Yeah, let's do it.
human versus machines design sprints. No, that sounds really fun actually, and really interesting. I don't know if either is inherently right or wrong. And again, I mean, not to be a broken record with this, but I think it's striking a balance. And what I've seen, if you completely outsource, if you lean totally on the human side, I just think it's unrealistic because what you'll get, there's a level of inefficiency that I think just happens now. And I think it would be wrong to overlook the incredible, actually human feedback loop that's made possible through the power of these AI tools, right? So I think for those human folks, they could do a wonderful job, but their inability to iterate and learn because of the limitations of a paper prototype, because of the just speed of physical human, like the purely manual version, they can only learn so much during that time, right? The fidelity of what they're learning gets limited, I think, by not using the tools. But then the flip side, I think the purely AI group is going to lack some of the deep human empathy and understanding and the kinds of things that I think Alex was alluding to, really understanding the problem in a deep way, making those sort of, call it low probability leaps that I don't think, at least the way that LLMs are constructed today, can't really make those leaps. They're kind of coming up with familiar problems. It's funny, actually, that the LLMs behave in a very similar way to a bunch of humans in a room in a brainstorm, as I'm sure you all have seen before. It's that sticky note session you talk about. People come up with kind of obvious ideas when they're together, right? We're all in a room for a couple hours and you're going to come up with things that are kind of top of mind, right? Because there isn't like a great structure. So they just, what can I think of? What fun ideas can I think of? And LLMs are actually doing a very similar thing. It's like, expected combinations in a sense, right? So you're not going to get a great level of creativity, I think, in either one if they're kind of working in that way, right? So again, I'd advocate for
That's a good way of
a
putting it.
balance of the two.
Like they're both, yeah. So the kind of like the AI in itself is just going to redesign what it already knows because it's ultimately fed by data that's already happened. And yeah, it's maybe that's the benefit of innovators and forward thinkers who can try and cross synthesize some of the stuff and the knowledge that we've learned from before with the potential kind of untrodden ground of how the future could look like. And yeah, maybe that's a value that's always going to be human protected just by virtue of the fact that like, can AI really predict things that, like, can AI really predict blind spots? I guess is a probably, Alex, you probably got quite a strong opinion on that. But like, can it predict blind spots truly if it's only fed off a data set of things that have happened?
Again, I mean, this question always kind of comes up way too many times, actually. But it's like, okay, so if AIs and LLMs are trained off of data models and kind of outputs that humans made, what makes that different to humans? Because we consume content. How do we discern what is actually important or not important? So it's again, it's kind of like an oracle question because it's so complicated and far beyond, I think, my understanding. But I think it is quite good at finding blind spots sometimes. I know that if I've done it personally, where if you go to an AI, if you're vibe coding something, you could say critically analyze this, because a lot of the time you've fallen in love with your idea to the point where you actually don't see the things that are blindingly obvious. The problem there is, of course, when it comes up with the counter narrative to things, how do you actually discern what is important and what is just, just to mention 5 things because it asked me to? So yeah, it's really tricky. And I think to almost pedal back on a separate point, we've reached a stage where it's so easy to kind of build and create, but very hard to understand the nuances of things. And as you guys kind of alluded to before, in an era where it's easy to create, does that mean that it's going to be very easy for people to systematically hack what's working via AI, and a lot harder to truly innovate? Because again, when you're talking innovation, an LLM is naturally trained off of boring data, so it can't really innovate. So I don't know if we're going to see that stagnate, but hopefully, with speed to prototype, it would increase.
I hope so too. Yeah. I take an optimistic view on it, but I also think you're going to have a sea of expected things, but also, there's like two things can be true here, right? We could end up with a giant, massive sea of incremental stuff, as well as some truly interesting breakthrough things that are made possible because of what the tools enable. And I think that's what I would sort of promote from people who want to be innovative in this space. I mean, you're going to have, think about like a Netflix, right? You have this just sea of good content, right? So sort of B- stuff that looks like TV shows and movies. That's kind of just meant to be on in the background, but also you have this opportunity now to create things that are, truly special as well. So I think both can be true.
You've also got the pace at which AI is developing. You've got two options, right? Do you go the complete left field, innovate, leap, kind of changing the horizon, or do you just ride the wave that's speeding up and going incredibly fast, which is very, as you say, incremental?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that's really interesting is that sort of the second order effect, right? They're like, okay, play this forward that everybody can make everything all the time, or that LLMs become, completely conversational and you could just kind of have it on all day. It's that sort of her future. But what are the problems in that world, right? And then you play that forward. And then what are all the possible ways that plays out? I think it gets a lot more interesting when you play it forward. I don't know. I mean, if everybody can build everything, then I think solving incremental problems, you're just going to be in a sea of similar solutions. So I think the really interesting stuff is on the other side.
We got
exactly what that is. But yeah.
We got 6 minutes left of the micro episode, and I've got 3 questions. I want to try and squeeze them in, Alex. Please jump in, Nick. I'm going to go with my 3. The first one is, should everyone learn to vibe code, or should we leave vibe coding as a tool for experienced developers to increase their potential output?
I'm going to give you an annoying answer that it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think this future is one where everyone is building their own solutions all the time. I just don't think that's a motivation that everyone has. And I don't think every single person has unique solutions. But what I think you will have is teams of people just inspired. Let's say you have 5 salesmen that work at a company. I think that group should be able to be empowered to build their own solution, right? So not necessarily everyone is vibe coding, but a team might, or a family might, or something like that, right? So I think you'll have sort of pockets of solutions, and you have a lot more sort of personal experiences being created. I think that's really exciting to see what happens when everyone is empowered to build something, because people might have lots of wonderful ideas and just haven't had the skill to be able to develop them, right? So now if you just unlock anyone with an idea can build the thing, I think that's incredibly powerful. So I guess on your spectrum, I fall closer to the everyone should, but probably not all the way, just practically speaking. It's probably, let's say, 2/3 of the way to everyone. Yeah.
Nice. Second question is, how do people escape the vibe coder's dilemma, or the vibe coder's trap, whatever we want to call it?
Take the time to really, I guess it's sort of curiosity, understand the human problem you're trying to solve. Take the time to understand the psychology of it, the behavior of it, really understand people, talk to people, right? Taking time to really make sure that the human problem you're trying to solve is meaningful or will be meaningful. I think it is embracing sort of human creativity. So when you're in your creation process, don't just create the first thing that comes to mind. It's kind of spending the time taking a sort of systematic, structured approach to think about what might be possible solutions, leaning on humans to do that, to make those sort of unexpected leaps. And then using taste. Don't just ask the AI what you should do kind of thing, right? So it's both I don't want to take, this is not an anti-AI stance at all. It's like an embrace the value of the technology, but retain what makes humans special. And I think that's how you escape it. It's discipline, but it's exciting.
And the last question I have, and Alex, you have a few minutes at the end, is, what do the systems of the future look like?
Man, we have 2 minutes on this. In what way? Say more.
So like, like at the moment, we're all familiar with, logging into a variety of different systems. They all have forms or login. I have to type into fields. I have to interact via text. I don't want to anchor your kind of answer here, but the real question is like, if kind of agentic AI takes over, what does it look and feel like to have a system? I see a lot of places at the moment saying we don't even need a website anymore. We just need our product to be online and optimized for AI agents, because humans aren't going to be looking at it anymore. It's going to be all their underlying agents that are making decisions and driving our sales and our eyeballs and whatever it may be. So
That's a great question. I have a couple of thoughts on it. One is, when we look back at this, I think we'll think it's absurd that we had to do the things that we're doing, right? The same way that you would look back at, a computer from the 80s, you'd be like, I can't believe I had to like sit down and type into a terminal, just to use a computer. And now we have these things, in our pocket, or we're talking to them, right? So I think it'll all look incredibly old fashioned. But two, what you're getting at is, as well, I don't think, as much as I'm a big believer in sort of that, it's the more her future, and maybe it's from being at Bose for a decade, but more of that audio-based experience and its natural language. That's to me, what I think a lot of this future looks like. And that could be for people who are creating as well, is you could just be having a conversation with these things. But I do believe there's still a place for, let's call it, old-fashioned technology in the future as well. Like, someone might still want to go to a website to order food for their dinner. That might not be something that you want to do just sort of walking around and speaking out into the ether, right? You don't want to see that menu. You don't want to see those pictures, because a human at the end of the day is still a human, and they might want to see what these things look like, because there's emotional value in seeing the pictures, right? But we use plenty of technology right now that is from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? So I think that's another thing to remember. I think sometimes people think about this magical future as though you just get dropped in, and you don't. I mean, there's like bits of the future, and then there's bits of the past all kind of rolled in. And it's a sort of interesting evolution. And the same thing, like those humans that exist 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they're evolutionary. They're the same as they're just human. They're humans from today that happen to be in the future. So I think it's remembering that, like, there's these new possibilities, but also these things are rooted in the past as well. So it's messy, it's evolutionary. That, again, I think I find really fascinating and interesting, and makes for a, I guess, messier answer to your question, but
there is no neat answer, right? Like, so I don't know if you've got any closing questions.
No, I think that was absolutely great. It was a very, very action-packed 30 minutes.
Like, we normally like carve out 2 hours for people, and we need that time for these amazing conversations. Hey, that was a really fun episode, and this is obviously, we can have many, many more conversations. This is just the first half an hour, but fantastic to meet you, and thank you for sharing your ideas on the Vibecoder's dilemma and just your views into the future.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. I'd be happy to come back anytime you want.